I want to extend a warm, open welcome to all. My name is Dr. Melissa Burdi, and I am the Vice President and Dean for the School of Nursing at Purdue University Global. And it is my great honor and pleasure to be here with all of you today to talk through our panel discussion on virtual patient modeling. Just to share a bit about my excitement around this particular topic, recently at Purdue University Global, we have been engaged in designing virtual reality as a new vehicle for learning for our nurse practitioner students. And we've been able to take some traditional experiences that have often been offered face-to-face and have transformed them into a virtual experience through the use of VR. I'd like to take the opportunity now to introduce our panelists joining us today. We have Jim Kiggins, our CEO of inciteVR. We have Vashko Torres, our Chief Technology Officer. And we have Dr. Mickey McMahon, who is our Associate Dean of Graduate Nursing Programs at Purdue University Global. So we'll go ahead and get started. We've got a lot of great topics that we want to touch on today. So sit back, relax, and I hope that you enjoy our time together. VR experiences have been at the forefront of immersive learning in many industries. But my question to get us started to the group is, why the push to move forward now?
That's a great question, Dr. Burdi, and thank you so much for asking. As you know, the COVID pandemic has had a significant impact on how we navigate our daily lives. With that said, universities across the nation in both the graduate and undergraduate space have been challenged with the task of finding clinical placements as well as basic nursing skills experiences for our students. Due to that and all of the measures that our nation has put in place to mitigate the spread of the pandemic, we have had to move forward with some innovative and new creative ideas in order to allow our students the opportunity to practice skills. At Purdue University Global, our acute care skills students are required to complete a face-to-face skills lab. Some of the skills that they use include intubation, suturing, arterial lines, paracentesis, and thoracentesis. In a normal environment, our students would go to one of our campus locations and learn how to perform these skills. Due to the pandemic, we were tasked with trying to provide our students this opportunity in learning and achieving and mastering these skills in a different type of setting. This has really been a positive disruption of the pandemic in that our thoughts, our vision has really come to light.
Thank you for sharing that, Dr. McMahon. Can you elaborate on what the planning process has entailed? How did the teams work together to build the scenarios and the cases?
We had an amazing opportunity to meet with the inciteVR team. At that time, we shared our vision with their team, and they in turn shared their vision with us. Coincidentally, it turned out that we had the same vision and that we were looking toward building something in the same capacity. This allowed us the opportunity to work with our faculty as SMEs, or subject matter experts, to provide the medical information and knowledge to the VR team for them to move forward and to build the skills labs for our students.
I think that Dr. McMahon had a terrific term that you just used, and that was a positive disruption. So it was a great opportunity for us to be in the right place and at the right time to meet the Purdue University Global team, who was looking for this solution. And this positive disruption was not just a stopgap. So it wasn't, well, we can't do what we really want to do, so we're going to do this other thing instead. It was more to leverage something that is proving to be actually beneficial. So immersive learning in VR supported by AI, can present the opportunity for learners to acquire skills faster, with greater accuracy, and retain learning longer. So it was bringing a solution to a challenge that was actually a positive disruption, a forward step. And it seems like you know, when we talk about like why now, especially in healthcare, there's so many early adopters in healthcare that there's been a slow progression in the healthcare industry in advance of other industries and verticals in the United States, where being adopted as a training methodology.
Thank you for sharing that, Jen. Any surprises since you've implemented and designed VR, certainly for the Nurse Practitioner Skills Labs? Any aha moments that have come forward?
I really feel as though the students have acclimated well to transitioning to a virtual environment. As you know, change can be very difficult, you know, in the midst of everything else that is happening. And technology can be frightening and scary to those that aren't very comfortable with it. We've been very lucky to work very closely with the team in that they provide one-on-one support to our students if they need that. Our students have been able to successfully complete our first 2 skills labs. I know that Mr. Kiggins was actually blown away by the fact that 96% of our students actually successfully completed that first skills lab. We've received so much positive feedback and commentary from the students as well, and that they felt that it was a very meaningful experience.
Thank you for sharing that, Dr. McMahon. You touched on something that I would like to talk a little bit more about, and that's really about student support. Can you talk through, anyone on the call here today, what type of student support was provided to our students? What advice would you give somebody that, you know, told you they've tried VR training once before and it made them feel uncomfortable or it was hard to use? And beyond that, what type of day-to-day support, once we were able to get our students over the hump of using VR for the first time, what did the day-to-day support look like?
In sense of them having tried VR before and having feel nauseous about it, I think it's important to say that each VR experience is different from another. So each VR experience is unique, and through time, like they have been evolving and becoming way better due to the hardware and also software. So before, most experiences that caused nausea was because the headsets that were used were 3 degrees of freedom. So you could only look around, and whenever the experience would or you would move inside the experience, the headset wouldn't translate that movement, so it would cause nausea. Nowadays, and for example, like the headset that we use for NP Skills Lab, it's a 6 degree of freedom, so you can move around, which induces way less nausea. Together with that, there's on the experience side of it, there are several things that we learn through time, which is, for example, like we cannot force any kind of movement on the player. So most, like a couple of years ago, most of the experience that people try for example, roller coasters. And that is one of the activities that causes the most nausea, because we are not moving, and on the experience, like we are just going through a roller coaster, but our body is not feeling that. So with that in mind, for example, in our case, we've learned all of that, and we tailor our experience to mitigate all of those things and make it as enjoyable as possible. So for those students or users that tried it before, we just tell you, just try again now with a better hardware, like with a good experience, and you might feel might have a different opinion. We've created a support page on our website that has video demos of all the labs, and we felt that just that, together with the Oculus installation guide that we created, is sufficient to help students go through the whole process of installing and then using our NP Skills Labs.
I think there were some things that, as Vashka mentioned, you know, us applying lessons learned from the past. There were some things that helped us quite a bit. There's a fair amount of friction in trying to onboard VR as a technology, especially in this particular case. It was brand new to everybody, all of the learners in the program. So they're encountering that at the same time they're trying to use it to accomplish this important requirement to finish their degree program. One of those things to help reduce the friction is that the applications are designed for use with hand tracking. So instead of having to use a controller, the input device that the learners are using are their hands, which most of us have. So there's a pretty good degree of familiarity there. Another thing that was impressive for us, especially compared to previous experience that we've had, was the resilience and the self-reliance of these learners. So these are online learners that are already very capable in terms of problem solving. And they had this stick-to-itiveness to work through those issues. So we provided them with the resources, but they availed themselves of those resources and were able to solve those problems. So we had a very small number of students that we needed to help in terms of direct support, and those students didn't give up. So by the end of the onboarding period, every single one of the learners in that first cohort was able to achieve getting set up and getting connected to the labs, which was for us a very encouraging sign for a wider deployment of immersive learning.
Thanks for sharing that, Jim. The resources and support that you've provided really have been student-centric. And certainly the immersive learning and the virtual reality that the three of you have described thus far is truly a differentiator, certainly within schools of nursing and nursing higher education. So it's such a thrill to be able to tell your story today and to hear about these amazing experiences. Let's shift gears and talk about training methodologies, beginning with how you approached training faculty. Did your faculty, if you can talk through, what did that training look like? And then what were some of the reactions or concerns or questions that came forward from faculty?
I really found that we were lucky in that aspect due to the fact that we had full faculty buy-in. All of our faculty had interest in building the lab, in completing the lab, and actually navigating the lab themselves. They had interest in reviewing the labs to provide additional information and resources and additional ways that we could improve this overall student experience as well. And so we didn't really have much pushback from the faculty, but again, it is a learning process. And so our faculty team met with the inciteVR team weekly, if not twice a week, to discuss each of the different labs, to provide the additional medical information, images of the different utensils and tools that we use within those labs as well, and to answer real-time questions from the team to provide the most intricate and real-to-life experience the students could have. So we had multiple training sessions, and prior to launching with the students, Jim also presented to our faculty the actual presentation that we provided to the students prior to the start of their lab. So it really opened the doors for conversation, opened the doors for commentary, as well as opened the doors for any improvements that needed to be made prior to.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Dr. McMahon. Jim, were you going to add to that?
I was going to say that I felt that something that was a big advantage for us is that we were able to spend the time with the faculty early on in the process to talk about how this is a different pedagogical approach. So we weren't just trying to figure out how can we take this thing that we normally would do face-to-face and use this technology to be able to do that. Instead, we all looked at this and the faculty equally were excited and embraced this idea that this is a different pedagogical approach. So what does that mean? What are the things that we have to think about when we're making these labs? And then how do we have to treat this differently in terms of how the students are going to use them and how we're going to support them? And there was, I mean, that was ubiquitous. Everybody bought in to the idea that this wasn't just a different tech doing the same thing. It was a completely unique approach.
Yeah, you said something, Jim, that really resonated, and that is the connection that you established with the faculty early on. And Dr. McMahon, you alluded to this as well. Being part of that development and is crucial for the success of rolling out anything new. So it sounds as though you were able to foster that connection. And I think that, coupled with the real-time support that you were providing for faculty as they were learning to navigate a new, to your point, pedagogical way of learning, so that they could then become versed in it and help students, is really key. So thank you for elaborating on that. Let's talk a little bit more now about how faculty members assist or follow students within the lab. This is what's fascinating, and I'd love to hear more about what this looks like.
So the students are assigned to a faculty that will follow them through the lab. We have plenty of opportunity for the students to reach out to their faculty as well. And the faculty can actually join them within the live experience to give them real-time feedback, as well as guide them through each procedure if needed. We feel as though that's valuable for the student to be able to have one-on-one interaction as well. On the back end, which Vashko can speak to this as well, we actually have a data back-end management system that will monitor all of the students' work and their progress throughout the lab. So we will have an idea of how long each student has spent in each lab, how many attempts they have tried, how successful they have been, to help us to determine where we need to maybe modify or change things if needed. The back end is live and is real time as well, and so faculty also have access to that as well.
We created the backend system so that all the data that we can gather from the experience is shown there, so that faculty can assess and understand what's happening with all the students. So we have graphs that have an overview of what's happening with the class, how many of them already finished a certain lab, or they can immediately see if there's a specific lab where they are having problems with. And as well, we have a survey that we ask the students to do at the end of each exam level, and we also show the results of that, so that the faculty can also use that information for any review or for the next sessions.
And by having access to the back end, we can use a data-driven approach to revise or to modify or to improve the labs as we move forward as well.
Yeah, I think having that analytical capability certainly allows for continuous quality improvement, and also the ability to be virtually agile. So as feedback is coming in, you have the ability to respond to that feedback in real time and make those changes, and that's quite powerful. So I'm very pleased to see that. Can you talk about any misconceptions that you may have heard or anticipate hearing from faculty as it relates to VR? What do those look like, and how did you navigate through those?
I think from both students and faculty alike, maybe initially there was some apprehension in that, how can a virtual experience engage a student in a way that a face-to-face experience can? And we have found that, in fact, it will. Our students have been very engaged. We have offered explanation as well. In a face-to-face format, we usually use the platform of see one, teach one. I'm sorry, see one, do one, teach one. Now, once the students go home, while they may have a central line kit, or they may have the utensils they need to place an arterial line, they don't have all of the tools that they need in order to move forward with that. In the virtual reality experience, in the Acute Care Skills Lab, the students have the opportunity to enter the open lab once they've completed their acute care lab, and they have access to all of the updated labs and any additional information or any additional labs that we provide to the students in a rolling year. So with that being said, a student can, in 2 months, go back and intubate a patient or place a central line prior to clinical, or 6 months after they've completed the lab, as they're starting their new role as a nurse practitioner provider, they can practice these skills prior to going to their place of employment. So it allows for a significant amount of opportunity to engage our students and to allow them to practice these skills and improve their skills acquisition.
Absolutely. That's great about engagement. And it sounds as though this really has provided an opportunity for students to practice skills in a controlled environment time over time until mastery has occurred. And I think that what's interesting about that is that it helps to really shape and build confidence and foster a seamless transition to practice. So that's very, very exciting to hear. Can you talk a little bit about, you've mentioned engagement, you've mentioned the opportunity to practice competencies, in the VR platform. Can you talk more about any other benefits of clinical training through immersive learning, or describe your experiences of the benefits that have come forward from this?
I really think that it opens the doors for students and graduates alike, as well as faculty. This platform, this experience doesn't only have to be in higher education. It can be used in a hospital setting as they're training new employees. It can be used in a medical setting as new orientees come on board. I think there's plenty of opportunity to engage students as well as perfect or improve how they can complete these tasks and these skills, as well as, again, gain their confidence and improve their comfort level while they are in clinical practice. I know Jim can speak about the empathy engine. It is an integral part of the Acute Care Skills Lab, and it really focuses on the entire student and embodying the entire process as well as the experience.
So one of the things that we all were striving toward in the design, which did in fact turn out to be evident, is that the learners have to assume ownership. So we provide the agency in the design of the experience, and then they have to embrace that. And that's not necessarily a standard approach, not just in healthcare, but in higher education in general, where we want the students to have almost an abandon, embrace the challenge, don't fear making mistakes. You're going to be able to experiment and explore, and being wrong is okay. And you have unlimited access. So you can do this as many times as you need to. And with that freedom to explore and experiment, then students get into a flow state where they are able to match the challenge with their skill. They lose track of time, and then that immersive step that they're taking in working with this lab opens the door for an empathetic connection to the experience. And as soon as that happens, then long-term retention of skills learned is going to be dramatically changed, because when you have that kind of empathetic connection to the learning activity, just like when you remember passages and details from your favorite movie or book, that's going to be something that you're going to take with you for a long time. So it is a change. It's a change in approach where the ownership is being placed, on the learner to be in charge of their own activity. But since they have so much more time and an opportunity to replay and fail and learn and experiment, then they take that with them, that connection that they had unto themselves when they were working in a flow state in VR that helps them. Later on, there's going to be a trigger, just like we all have with our favorite movie or book. There's going to be a trigger that's going to rekindle that experience. And they go, oh, that's right, I remember how to do this.
Wonderful. You talk about the flow state. You talk about being able to practice and have multiple opportunities to get in there, and that we learn through our mistakes, and it's okay to make mistakes. Can the team share a little bit more about the type of feedback that the students receive on an ongoing basis, so that if they are making mistakes, how are they learning to correct those mistakes?
One thing that the system provides is the system provides a method for coaching. So then they can follow this method for coaching, and they can keep repeating that alongside the method for coaching until they have a confidence that allows them to do it in an expert mode where there is no coaching. And as soon as they get in that expert mode, they realize whatever skills gaps are evident. So if there's a particular part of the procedure that they're not strong in, they don't have that coaching anymore, they have the freedom to go back and repeat those in the guided mode and have more coaching until they have the confidence that they need to get into the expert mode, and continue on until they have a level of confidence in their mastery that they can actually attempt the exam mode, which is a one-time only opportunity to demonstrate that they have in fact mastered all the competencies in the protocol.
And just to elaborate on that, as Jim was mentioning, each lab has 3 different components. The first component is a guided mode in which the student goes in, and there are ghosted hands to show you which utensil you pick up and where it's supposed to go. And you can practice using the guided mode. Once you feel confident and comfortable, you would move to the practice mode, in which there is no additional assistance, but you would move through the lab yourself. Once you're comfortable and confident with that, that's when you would move to the exam mode and test out to complete that specific lab. So this does mimic the see one, do one, teach one in a way, but allows for multiple different attempts as well.
Also on guided mode, we have, as we are explaining different steps, we have a system to explain the user like what that step is in reality, but also how to do it in virtual reality with a brief description of that activity. Also, I wanted to mention that the student also has information of all their attempts on all the labs. So that is passed to the faculty on our backend, but on the actual experience, once they open the application, they see that list of attempts, like what was their best time, their mastery, and if they finished, like how many times they tried guided mode, expert mode. All of that information is also provided to them.
Wonderful. And so, Bashko, in addition to students having that insight, do faculty as well have the ability to see the number of attempts and the success that the student has been able to forge ahead with?
Yes, like they have information of like all the attempts for each lab and each play mode. Also, like what was the best time, like the quickest that they did the procedures, when was the first time that they completed, for example, for exam mode, that's important. And we, like I said before, like we have these overview graphs that we provide to faculty, but also we have, since this backend is also used by the organization administrators, we have those also for the administrators, where they can see those same graphs, but for all their faculty across the organization.
Wonderful, thank you. Opportunities, it sounds like that if you have a creative spirit, that combined with the immersive learning pedagogy, the opportunities appear to be endless from everything that the group has shared thus far.
And something that we have built into, as Bashko was mentioning, something that we have built into the enterprise design are some engines that allow us to relieve some of the burden, the cost of development. For example, we have a physiology engine from Kitware that we use that allows us to leverage the engine to create behaviors for the non-player character for the patient. So then with those kinds of engines, that opens the door for faculty and staff to be able to customize the patient and customize the scenario, the case that's being presented, so that if you have one patient that has this set of health characteristics and another completely different patient with other characteristics, how they behave in the experience is being driven by those engines. So then faculty and staff can take advantage of their experience and customize the labs for their students to maximize, it's a win-win for everyone. So instead of one size fits none, it's an opportunity for everyone to be able to input their expertise, especially as things change. So then you're using this differently perhaps a year from now because something has arisen, a change in procedure, a change in thinking. It's easy to implement that change rather than having a hard-coded lab that has to be completely rebuilt.
Yeah, you mentioned one size fits none, Jim, and that leads right into my next question, something that I was going to touch on. Do you think that immersive learning benefits any particular type of student?
I think it has the opportunity to benefit all students. We are working towards having the opportunity to change our patients' ethnic background, to change their gender, so that our students are treating patients that look like them, that live in their community, so that we have an opportunity to address different disparities in health, and different opportunities for students to really care for patients in their community. And so, it's not just one same patient that the students care for across the board. We have the opportunity to modify, and this allows us, an enormous opportunity for our students to really get a beneficial experience overall. And again, to feel as though they're caring for someone in their community.
Absolutely. That's a wonderful way for us to focus in on diversity and inclusion, and certainly provides, again, focusing in on that transition to practice, building a well-rounded graduate that has a multitude of experiences from which they can draw upon as they look to enter the practice setting. So thank you for elaborating on that, Dr. McMahon. As you think about immersive learning in the next year, next 2 to 3 years, next 5 years, what do you envision that looking like? What can we expect?
So we're seeing today advances in the immersive learning space that will become commonplace in the next couple of years, that are going to dramatically improve input. And I think it's one of the most important areas that needs improvement. So headsets are going to have better graphics. That's an easy one. Everyone can anticipate that would happen. Moore's law kind of a thing. It's going to be less expensive, smaller, faster, better. But what it'll be able to do is the headset itself will be able to recognize facial gestures. We'll have tracking that will improve the artificial intelligence ability to predict with gestures, will allow even better, more accurate hand tracking. We'll have the kinds of experiences that we see now that are typically being delivered for one learner will be multi-learner. So then when you have the first time you see your hands in VR is an effect called embodiment. So I see my hands in VR, so now I'm in VR, I move my hands and my hands move in VR, therefore I'm in VR. So that's a very profound experience when you first realize that you are present in VR. That's exponentially increased when you see someone else for the first time in VR. So I think that a big improvement in learning is going to be more cooperative, more constructivist, more multi-learner situations that are going to happen. And that's all going to be based around improvements in bandwidth, 5G, improvements in the headsets. So the whole tech stack is going to enable us to be able to bring, to a certain degree, those are evident now. You can use them today, but it'll be much more commonplace.
I really also see it moving forward in that we could implement it across schools, not only within the School of Nursing here at Purdue University Global, but across schools. Maybe we can incorporate psychology or public health, maybe criminal justice, and that our students can work across schools and programs together on a case or on a specific scenario, pulling our students together and making those connections.
Absolutely, that interprofessional collaboration, which is so valuable, to your point, not only for students within schools of nursing, but other schools alike. So that's wonderful to hear. It's exciting to see this group pioneering these concepts, certainly innovative, and really serving as the immersive learning catalysts to bringing us forward to new vehicles for learning of the future. So we've spent this wonderful time talking about enriched experiences that you've had working with nurse practitioners and skills labs, from developing scenarios and cases to working with faculty to gain their input, their buy-in into the processes through training faculty, and then of course training our students and engaging them in the process as well, hearing their feedback, taking that feedback and having the ability to respond with agility in the moment to make the process even better over time. And of course, hearing about where we're at today with this technology, but also where we hope and anticipate going in the near future. So I'd like to thank everybody for joining us during this time.